Welcome to Now Innovating, a research to impact series at the University of Calgary. I'm your host, Julia McGregor. In this episode, we speak with Dr. Stephen Larter, UCalgary's first Associate Vice President, Research and Innovation, and a professor in the Department of Earth, Energy, Environment in the Faculty of Science. Steve invited us into his home, where we had the chance to get to know him better as he wraps up his term as Associate Vice President. We even play a game. We also chat about the changes that have undergone in the innovation ecosystem at the university, the new Research and Innovation Implementation Plan, and what the next 5 years will hold for innovation at UCalgary. Hi, Steve, and welcome back to Now Innovating.
Thank you.
I'm so excited for us to have this conversation because, I'm quite jealous because, you're the reason that this series started, due to your leadership. And you've been on a previous episode before with past hosts, Jordan and Pritma. And, on that episode, you talked about the fear of failure, like what universities really need to do to encourage innovation, building innovation culture, and how, sharing stories through Now Innovating, through the podcast and through the video series is a way to help encourage and build that. So I want to encourage our audience to go back and listen to that podcast only episode with Steve because it's fantastic. So I didn't want to, have the same conversation with you. Sure. You were the very first Associate Vice President, Research and Innovation appointed at the University of Calgary in 2019. And, before that, you really were integral to, with your leadership of helping to formalize and develop, an innovation ecosystem at the University of Calgary. When you first became a faculty member at the university, what was the state of innovation here now, compared to what we have?
Yeah, well, the university's been doing innovation for many years, right? And if you go in the science park, you've got that big building, CMG. Mm-hmm. So this was a company that came out of engineering in the, I think, late 70s, early 80s, right? Yeah. So there's always been some innovation going on. So when I came, it was still, I would say, though, in mostly in what I call the maverick stage. So where people are doing it, they're doing startups. You had Innovate Calgary there helping people, but basically people were kind of doing their own thing. Mm-hmm. There wasn't the same development of a culture of, this is something I can do. Yeah. And so the people who tended to do it were the ones who would have done it anyway, right? Under any sort of circumstances. Mm-hmm. And so I got to Calgary in 2004, July. So there were lots of new faculty being hired. Mm-hmm. And there were several big projects that I was involved in early in the years of Carbon Management Canada. And all of these were, looking back, they were all building teams, developing the platform at which you could sort of translate research into inventions, into technology and things like that. And I would say, though, the difference then between now was Innovate Calgary was out there waiting for someone to go and deliver something to them, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas now Innovate Calgary is much more integral to the university ecosystem. It's much more of a kind of a mix and a melding that's taken place. So the system developed, the stories developed, right? You're part of one of the big key changes over the last 3, 4, 5 years, which is telling the stories, right? Mm-hmm. And of course, the majority of people didn't do innovation, and they didn't know what was involved in doing it. Whereas now we've got the stories, we've got the, lots of people can see, those people doing that crazy innovation stuff. Well, they're kind of like me anyway, so I can do it too, right? There's nothing sort of massively challenging here. Yeah, the first startups that I was involved in were 2006. Mm. And again, I'd say I don't think I'm a maverick, but I had a grad student who was a maverick, and she was a bit of a dynamo, and she sort of basically kicked us up the butt to form our first startup in 2006. I was involved in the Faculty of Science, and we ran a thing called Skunk Works, which was sort of like Inventors Club, really. Yeah. And it was kind of, we just had people from everywhere, kind of, that would just sort of wander in. Every couple of weeks, we'd have a sort of evening, get some pizza and stuff like that, and just talk about startups and inventions and stuff like that. And then it just sort of kind of slowly boiled up. Science faculty, they made me, what was I called? I can't remember what I was called. Had some title, unimportant. A sort of innovation advisor to the dean, that's right. Okay. special advisor to the dean, SAD.
Oh.
I think that was the title, something like that.
Yeah, that sounds really important.
That sounds really important.
SAD innovation advisor.
Yeah. So, and then gradually it sort of became more real, more serious.
Yeah, I think I'd be curious too, like thinking even, with that graduate student in the startup you're doing in 2006, right? Like, and I started W21C back in 2012, and even, things were quite siloed and like understanding like where the support resources were. So like, I think too, like there's so much more training, like the E2I program, like that's huge, like Launchpad, all those pieces to, give that entrepreneurial, like the business side, because everyone knows the science, like everyone knows like I can validate this.
Yeah, it's just become much more visible, right? So Peak Scholars just recognizing invention, creation, innovation in all its sort of many multiple forms. That was important.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, a lot of it is just like E2I. What is it? In essence, it's a recruitment program, just trying to interest people, get them into the tent, get them thinking about
what does it even mean?
What does it even mean, right? What does it even mean? And deliberately designed so there are sort of multiple paths. You could go and do a startup, and many have done startups, but it also could just be professional demovement,
exactly,
and other kind of benefits, AIR programs, special mentoring, things like that. But I think E2I had over 100 applicants in the last cycle, so lots of teams, and it's now become a sort of a standard thing. And the key thing is they're new people; they're not the same old. If I look back at some of the mavericks in the system, the sort of the Ian Gates and people like that, they've done multiple startups. Greg Welch, people like this. But what you want is you're trying to build a community, you're trying to build a culture where people think, oh and I'm going to do a startup as well. I'll get my degree and I'm going to do the startup. So I think that's been quite a transformation, really.
Yeah, and I think the ecosystem is so connected that if you go to one touch point, it's not really the right stage for you. That everyone working in the ecosystem here knows how to direct you appropriately.
Send you to the right, you to the right place, right?
Yeah, like what's the stage that you're at, that you like, what's appropriate resources, and like
exactly.
It's very cool. Oh, thank you for sharing that. That's excellent. I am curious, like things you don't get to probably talk about a lot of the time. Like we know you're being an AVP and your roles, you're always like you're going to talk about the ecosystem as a whole, but like what things that are happening that you're aware of right now in the innovation ecosystem here are you like most excited about?
Most excited about, I still get excited about these sort of newbies coming in and getting excited and starting a company, and even within 1 or 2 years getting some investment and kind of moving the dial, and some of the stories you're familiar, people starting schools in Africa or solving problems with microbiome or capturing carbon dioxide from the air, all these kinds of things. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
The university's building out this University Innovation Quarter, Life Science Innovation Hub, everyone's heard of that, great success story. Social Innovation Hub, developing strongly, but a new quantum hub.
Yep.
And 2 weeks ago at the airport, we've got an aerospace and advanced manufacturing hub as well.
Yeah.
And the key thing is that's the university and the community all kind of jumbled up and mixed together. So we're not just producing people with degrees, and we're not just producing publications, but it's real engagement with society, real solutions, and benefits and economy for society.
Yeah, it'll be really exciting to see as the years progress, like further development of UIQ, and that it's going to be really fantastic for the university and the communities. So we do have a new research and innovation implementation plan that is out, and I was curious if you could speak to really what this means to the innovation community, like what's outlined in that plan that should be. Yeah,
so it's we've always been, I think, an ambitious university, but now we've set our targets on very specific goals with numbers in them, right? So now it's harder to wave your arms when you don't get there. Certainly in terms of startups, we create lots of startups, and we've been very successful at that over the last few years. But now we're trying to get the not just the numbers, but the volume and the quality of the startups. And so we're trying to get onto what's called the PitchBook League Table. And PitchBook, it's an investor program that sort of assesses startups in terms of kind of investability. And the the leadership of the university have said, yeah, we really want to go for it. And we want to get into the top 50 of this PitchBook league table. It's an international league table, within a decade, which is quite a serious goal. But if you want to go to the moon, the first thing you've got to do is decide, I'm going to go to the moon,
yes.
right? So this is our sort of our shot at the moon, and that means we're really trying to scale up. So programs like E2I Air, UCEED, all the programs will have to go up in kind of volume if we're going to be able to achieve that goal. And it means the university's always taken it seriously, but now it's kind of written on the tablets
yes.
now. We've actually we've sort of committed.
That PDF is locked for editing.
Locked. We can't change the numbers. So I think that's quite exciting. There's a buzz now, right? It's no longer, it's not even a new thing, is it anymore? It's it's part of it's sort of part of the woodwork.
Exactly. I know, especially being startup creator in Canada for 3 years in a row. Yeah. When you did the episode previously, it was the first time we'd been startup creators. So we are making strides.
I mean, if you look at and it's not just a local phenomenon. If you look at UCEED, the UCEED Seed Fund, 6 or 7 streams now, and it's not just funding startups out of University of Calgary; it's across Canada.
Yeah.
So, gradually we're becoming a major node. I'm pretty happy with what we've done. A long way to go, though. You always have to remember, it's kind of a log scale, right?
Yes.
Wherever you are, we did 10 times better than we did last year, but, there's people, 3 orders of magnitude up there. So I think we have to bear that in mind, keep patting ourselves on the back because we've done really well. But we've still got it's got a ways to go. Excellent. And I think it will happen.
Yeah. I know. We'll work towards it. And I know. And the culture's there, the community's there. It's just additional resources, and we will move forward. So I know as you're coming out of this term too, you're leaving this role, but you're not leaving us entirely. You'll still be around.
I'm not leaving the planet.
Yes, thank goodness. Yeah. So I'd miss you too much. Yeah. But what do you hope to see really in the next 5 years in the UCalgary innovation ecosystem? Yeah,
I think a lot more. We've got already having some big successes, and that's not just successes in values of company, but lots of impact. We had carbon engineering. Companies are selling now for very large amounts of money. I think more of that. On a regular basis, but not just the deep tech, the hard tech ones, but also businesses like consultancies, which are the bulk of the GDP in Canada, right there. So it's going to get more and more diverse. It sounds naff, but there'll be more of it, and it'll be better. Yeah, basically, I think that's the key. With a few of these stellar success stories that in turn will help attract more investment, more resources into the system. Yeah, and I think also act to be. We're probably too internally competitive. I think in Canada, right? We're still a relatively small country, and we still tend to compete with ourselves rather than competing with the outside world. So I think. Getting the federal government's got some quite good programs now. I mean, Elevate IP, but there's another program called Lab to Market, where the universities are basically working together to deliver programs and taking the best of what everybody's got and sort of delivering it in a more holistic way, kind of across Canada. What we still need to put in work is invention, right? We're really good at research, really good at discovering new knowledge. We're not as efficient yet as we need to be in terms of seeing the solutions in that new knowledge and making inventions, right? So again, I think this year, AIR had part of the AIR program was basically inventions. They all had to file an invention disclosure, and I think it went up 30 or 40% or something. The numbers of, so I think things like this, and again, it's culture change. Yeah. And just sort of specifically targeting the areas where we need to, I need to put more effort and improve.
I think a lot of it too comes down to awareness, right? Like if you're a researcher, you're like, I know how to publish, but I don't know how to file. So that's, and you're right. There hasn't been the education or
exactly. Yeah, it's not rocket science. It's a cultural thing.
You talked a lot about like the commercial aspects too of like, the research impact of work, but there's such a huge social innovation initiative too here at the university, right? And like with the pilot programs, like T2RA that, Tara Barnes and Joanne are like working on to like develop, like it's really, I think it's really exciting to see the different ways we can have impact if it is through invention and IP or like, actual social change, right?
Yeah. So the one thing, so we've got, that what I call, you've got USeed, okay, USeed's sort of the exhaust pipe, right? You're putting early stage funding into startups. What we call pre-seed, which would be E2I Air, it's at the front of the funnel, trying to recruit new people in, really get them going, assist them, help them going. The other bit that we need in that front of the funnel, and we have some of them are these fellowships. We've had Green STEM, we've had Green STEM, we've had Innovation Catalyst grants.
That's the new placement for that.
But, we're talking now about like, I was calling them Research and Innovation Fellows, but that sounds sort of stuffy and...
At least it's not like a sad fellow.
It's like sad fellow. You could be a sad fellow. Yeah. A sad fellow. I think we're calling them. Adam Pitasecki wants to call them like venture champions, right? So you've got probably lots of clever stuff around the university, but the people who've done the discovery don't understand what the potential is, or they're not interested in developing it. So have a sort of cadre of people who you bring in, who can basically either bring in their own IP or take that IP and build a venture around it. Yeah. The other thing we're trying to do is, if you look at the really big challenges like climate change and stuff like that, I think in many cases it's not obvious that the classical startups they can make contributions, but they're just too small. You need much bigger teams. And so how do you construct teams that can be quite complex, quite diverse, quite large, where there's probably several years of research, and then maybe you'll have a technology that can solve a major problem. And so looking at ways of like building teams in a very different way. So constructing teams rather than, just waiting for some smart folks to have an idea and decide to push it. And if you look at some of the venture models now in climate, for example, you're getting some quite interesting ones where you have a company, but then it'll have a not-for-profit open source research arm connected to it. Not every researcher wants to be in a startup, but those kind of models mean you can get your very strong researchers who are interested in just doing research, and you can link this essentially philanthropically funded research not-for-profit company with a commercial company that's delivering the technical solutions together. So there's quite a few of these kind of like not very traditional looking kind of hybrid models. Yeah. And so we're starting to kind of look for things like that. And I think in some ways that's a better model, because some of these problems are so big that you just can't tackle them with the standard startup model.
Well, we've definitely got some things to look forward to and seeing what's, going to progress, Yeah. And thank you so much for sharing those thoughts. I wanted to wrap this up by playing a game with you because,
right.
Steve, like we don't get to spend that much time together. And I thought, let's let our audience, get to know you a little bit more. So I have like a this or that questions for you, which you do not know.
Okay.
So it's kind of rapid fire. So it's kind of like, it's going to be like an either or.
Okay.
And you get, first instincts, what's your favorite of the two? And you can tell me why after. But we're going to go, all right, guacamole or salsa?
Guacamole.
Oh, I know, definitely. So good.
Yeah, so it's not.
And you got an avocado tree in here.
I've got an avocado, but it never produces, they don't produce fruit, unfortunately.
That's amazing. Fun t-shirts or fun socks?
Oh, tricky one. I think my instinct says fun t-shirts, but because you're here, I have to say fun socks.
And we're both wearing like our fun like our research and innovation socks that you can buy from the UCalgary bookstore, which are quite fantastic. But I also wore a fun t-shirt today too, because I know you are quite known for your style around campus. Robots or dinosaurs?
Robots.
Robots, yeah. More the tech side, the dinosaurs are gone.
Well, I'm sure there'll be robot dinosaurs at some point, right?
That's like the that series of Transformers when they were like dinosaurs. That was pretty cool. Do you prefer a funny story or a one-liner?
Could be a very long line, I guess. I mean, a hilarious one-liner would defeat a moderately funny story, I guess.
Yeah, there you go. I'm terrible at giving one-liners. I tell the world's longest stories that eventually have a punchline. Coffee or tea?
Coffee or tea? I'd have to say both.
I don't know. Can you say both?
I would say...
You are British, so do you have to...
I would say tea,
okay,
probably tea, yeah.
What's your brand?
We drink lots of Chinese tea.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, not Tetley guy.
Pu'er tea. Looks like a cow pat, basically. It tastes really good.
I have to look into that. I haven't. I guess this is a weird one, but misquoted movies or mistaken lyrics?
Mistaken lyrics.
Yeah.
Lady Mondegreen, there was a... She laid him on the green, and when it's sung, it was interpreted as Lady Mondegreen.
Okay, and this is my final this or that. Ambition or comfort?
Ooh, ambition or comfort? I'll go for ambition, I think.
Ambition, I feel like you're an ambitious guy. Okay, those are my questions. So thank you for sharing those things about yourself and your preferences. You know, we know you like guacamole, some Chinese tea, robots are cool. And I really just appreciate you, letting us, do this interview with you. And thank you so much for all of your leadership in this role you've done. I've really enjoyed working with you, and I'm really going to miss you. But I don't get to, spend as much time with you. But thank you for coming on Now Innovating.
Thank you. Thanks to you both for doing such a fantastic job with this podcast, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
You can find links in our episode description to learn more about Ahead of Tomorrow. And to learn how to move your research impact in the UCalgary innovation ecosystem, visit ucalgary.ca/innovation.
Julian Steve on the band.